Welcome to Kids Recall. In today's video, we will be going through the 2018 movie Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie starts and we are taken to a flashback to 1987. We see Hank Pym and his wife Janet Van Dyne. The couple is all set to go on a mission. Janet comes to say goodbye to the little girl as the couple is leaving their young daughter Hope in the care of their housekeeper. Here we learn that the two are working for the organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. and they're on a secret mission. As Ant-Man and the Wasp, they shrink themselves to stop a Soviet nuclear missile from detonating inside American territory. Finding that they can't shrink small enough to slip between the steel plates, Janet goes subatomic to drop the missile into the ocean. But it leaves her lost in the quantum realm, and she is, of course, presumed dead. She's now in the quantum realm where there is no sequence of time. The time and the days do not matter there because it's a totally different dimension. However, after Scott Lang as the new Ant-Man went subatomic and managed to return to normal size, Hank tells his daughter Hope that there might be a way to bring Janet back. If Scott can come back from there, so can her mother. He, however, says that he thinks Janet has not been to find the right signals and the right locations, which is why she's not been able to make it out of the quantum realm. He tells his daughter that he wants to make a machine, which they can use to try to bring back her mother. The scene then changes, and we're taken to Scott's house, who is playing hide and seek with his little daughter named Cassie. Scott has been under house arrest after violating the Sokovia Accords by working with Captain America in Stuttgart, Germany. He is spending his day with Cassie, who is visiting him for the day. Scott has a whole area set up with the help of Lewis in his house for them to play in, including a slide that goes out the door. Unfortunately, Scott's foot breaks through the fence and therefore the perimeter, and the FBI pays him a visit. Agent Jemmy Woo leads the inspection to make sure Scott isn't doing anything suspicious. Cassie goes on to ask them why they are bugging her father like that, and Woo goes on to tell her that her father is now under house arrest for 3 years because he has refused to sign on a new act by UN that prohibits him to work with the Avengers. However, only 3 days are left, and then Scott will be able to go out of the house. Scott explains that he's had to get creative to entertain Cassie, including doing sleight of hand magic, which impresses Woo. The FBI leaves and Cassie goes back with Maggie and Paxton. With only 3 days left under house arrest, Scott does what he can to keep himself occupied. He takes a bath and then has a dream where he finds himself as Janet playing hide and seek with a young Hope. He's really weirded out by the dream. He decides that he's going to tell his dream to Hank, so he later gives Hank a call. Despite both he and Hope not having spoken to him since his arrest, he tells Hank about the dream he saw. Both father and daughter are shocked to hear about the dream, and Scott goes on to hang up. Hours later, Scott is tranquilized by something flying into the room. Scott wakes up to find Hope driving him somewhere in a shrunken van. She lets him know that she took off his ankle bracelet and put it on the giant ant Scott has living with him. He tells her that he's in house arrest and that if he is with him, who is at his house? She tells him not to worry about it as it has already been taken care of. She has left someone who does all the things just like Scott. She tells him that the man is going to follow his full routine and the FBI is going to have no idea what's going on. They arrive at the lab where they show Scott that they have created a tunnel to the quantum realm in the hopes of bringing Janet back. After Scott describes his dream in full detail, Hank goes on to tell him that when he saw that dream, Hank was working on a machine of quantum field. He opened the door to the machine, but it stopped working due to being overpowered. The machine, however, did get turned on, even if it was only for a second. Hank and Hope deduce that he and Janet are connected because of the time he spent in the quantum realm. Hank then goes on to ask Scott what he saw in the quantum realm. He tells him to give him some details because that's the only way he can manage to come up with something to bring back Janet. They're missing a key electronic component to get the tunnel to work, so they head to meet with someone who possesses it. Hank shrinks the lab and takes it with him. However, they don't realize they are being watched by a transparent figure. They realize that the machine keeps getting turned off, so they're going to have to find a controller to control the power because it gets turned off due to being overpowered. They then remember that there is one guy who can help them with it and decide to approach him. The three arrive at a restaurant where Hope meets with Sonny Burge, a black market tech dealer, while Scott and Hank monitor the situation from inside the van. Burge knows Hope as Susan, but he's already figured out her identity by the time she arrives. Burge refuses to give up the component that Hope needs, as he goes on to say that he can only give her the component if they are willing to sell him the whole lab, as he has a guy who's interested and is willing to pay even more than $700 million. He says that she is going to have to say yes if she wants a deal with him, because he really needs that lab. Hope is not at all interested, so she appears to leave. Birch and his goons start to walk out, but they're knocked around by Hope, who has made her way back to her Wasp suit. Scott is impressed to see that she has wings and blasters. She fights them in the restaurant's kitchen and manages to enlarge a salt shaker to knock out one goon, while also running across knives being thrown at her. Hope manages to get her hands on the component, but she grabs the component. She's attacked by the figure from earlier, Ghost. The Ghost is, of course, able to phase through anything, which means Hope's punches are useless against her. Scott joins Hope as Ant-Man in a new suit to help her, but Ghost escapes and makes her way to the van and steals the lab from Hank. Hank Pym is now really worried, not knowing what to do. Scott says that they're going to have to go bring back both the lab and the component at any cost. But how? Scott brings Hope and Hank to hide at XCon, the security company run by Lewis, with Dave and Kurt as his employees. Hank Pym then goes on to mention one of his old colleagues named Bill Foster. He tells them that Bill Foster used to be his assistant and he worked on quantum theories with him. On the other hand, Ghost, whose real name is Ava Starr, goes to her home. She phases involuntarily and must sleep inside a special chamber to control it. The trio then decide to meet Bill Foster despite the fact that Hank is really reluctant about it. Scott, Hope, and Hank go in disguise to the university that Bill teaches at. When Bill Foster sees Hank Pym sitting in the class, he tells all the students to get out of the class right away. He maintains a grudge against Hank over the work they did together decades earlier, in which Bill reached 21 feet. Scott then sees Wu and his fellow agents outside, thinking that they know he's in there. Before they go, Bill tells them that they can locate the lab by modifying a diffractor on one of the suit's regulators. Hank says they can't use the new Ant-Man suit because it's a work in progress. So Scott tells them they can find it in the older suit, which is in a trophy case that Cassie took to school for show and tell. Scott and Hope sneak into Cassie's school, but the regulator on Scott's suit malfunctions, making him the size of a child. They get to Cassie's classroom and get the suit out of the trophy before they're spotted. The three of them then go on to locate the ghost home, who is Ava in actuality. They also find the lab, but she knocks all three of them out and has them tied up. She reveals that she's working with Bill, who took her in as a child, when she suffered from a deadly disease. She then goes on to tell her story as she says that her father, Elias Starr, had attempted an experiment to reach the quantum realm, but his own tunnel became unstable. His wife, Catherine, tried to escape with young Ava, but the little girl ran back to her father. The tunnel caused a huge explosion, killing Elias and Catherine, but Ava survived and her molecules destabilized, resulting in her uncontrolled phasing. She and Bill now plan to use Janet's quantum energy to help Ava turn normal, even if it might kill Janet. Hank fakes a heart attack to get Bill to grab a tin of Altoids for his meds, which really contain Hank's trained ants that grow to a large size and help them get free, allowing the three to escape and take the lab back. The three then go to a forest where they finally manage to turn on the machine. When the machine is on, they again try to locate Janet. Janet then goes on to take control of Scott's mind, and Scott starts acting just like Janet, revealing to Hope and Hank a new algorithm that will help them stabilize the tunnel and enter the coordinates to locate her. She tells them that their old algorithm was wrong, and that's why they have not been able to fully locate her. She then goes on to warn them that they only have 2 hours before the quantum realm becomes so unstable they won't be able to reach her for another century. After that, Birch and his goons go to X-Con and interrogate Lewis, Dave, and Kurt using a truth serum. Lewis reveals that Scott is with Hope and Hank in the woods, where they set up the lab. Ava appears after having heard this information and takes out the wheels on Birch's van as she heads to find the heroes herself. Birch then contacts the crooked FBI agent Stoltz and tells him where Scott will be. Stoltz tells Wu, and Lewis quickly warns Scott so that he can return home before he's caught escaping his house arrest. Cassie is with him and says he could use a partner to help him, meaning herself, but Scott says he has Hope, which Cassie thinks is also a good fit. Hope and Hank are caught by FBI agents once they shrink the lab. Stoltz grabs it, but it's knocked out of his hands by Ava, who then takes the lab herself. Scott uses the trained ants to help Hope and Hank break out of the FBI headquarters. The ants guide the three to the lab's location, and Lewis joins them as backup. Hank uses the giant ants to get Bill out so that he can use his old suit to go into the quantum realm and find Janet. The lab is shrunken again, and Lewis grabs it. Scott, as Ant-Man, is attacked by Ava, but he holds her off long enough for Hope and Lewis to get away. Scott flies away on a flying ant to meet up with Hope and Lewis at the rendezvous point, but they are followed by Birch and his men, as well as Ava. Hope shrinks and enlarges the van to literally throw the goons off, even enlarging a Hello Kitty Pez dispenser to throw at one of them. Scott grows to Giant Man to stop them, but as Ava intervenes, Hope becomes the Wasp to fight her. Birch takes the lab and runs to the docks where he boards a ship to get away. Scott grows again to reach him and stop him to recover the lab. Lewis shows up in another car to meet with them, but Scott gets lightheaded from being so giant that he falls into the water. Hope swims down to save him, and on the other hand, in the quantum realm, Hank nearly loses his signal, but he finally manages to locate Janet at her coordinates, and they tearfully reunite with a kiss. Meanwhile, the lab is returned to normal size, and Ava and Bill are planning to extract Janet's quantum energy. Hank and Janet start to return as Ava and Bill begin the process, which starts to drain Janet. Scott and Hope show up and disable the machine, giving Hank and Janet enough time to come out of the quantum realm, and Hope is finally reunited with her mother, whom she lost when she was just 6 years old. While out, Jane goes on to notice that Ava is in a really bad condition, so she puts her hands on Ava to stabilize her and stop her phasing. Everyone leaves as the hero takes the lab. Bill wants to keep protecting Ava, but she tells him they need to split up. Outside the lab, Dave and Kurt help Lewis incapacitate Birch and his goons, before injecting them with truth serum as the cops arrive, leading to their arrest. Birch and his goons admit to everything, but on the other hand, Wu thinks that Scott is out on the streets as Ant-Man, but he goes to his home and finds Scott there banging on his drums. Scott's sentence is finally over, and he's a free man. After getting free, he right away goes to see his beloved daughter. On the other hand, Lewis gets a new wealthy client for his business to keep them from going under. Hank brings Janet to the beach, where they set up a new house that expands to its original size. Scott shrinks himself, Hope, and Cassie in a car so they can use a laptop as a screen like a drive-in movie. Hank and Janet go on to get a house on the beach and start living there, while Scott now gets along well with Hope as we see Scott, Hope, and Cassie hanging out together, and they seem to be having a great time. And with that, the movie comes to an end. In the mid-credits scene, Hank and Janet have set up the quantum tunnel in a van on a rooftop with Hope's help so that Scott can enter it. He obtains quantum energy to keep helping Ava be stabilized. Just as Scott is ready to be brought back, he hears a radio static and doesn't hear anyone on the other end. Back in the real world, Hank, Janet, and Hope have all been turned to dust by Thanos snapping his fingers at the end of Avengers: Infinity War, leaving Scott forever trapped in the quantum realm with no chance of getting back to Earth. In the post-credits scene, most of San Francisco appears to have felt the effects of the gauntlet. More than half of all life in the city, on Earth, and the entire universe is gone, except for the giant ant, who is still in Scott's apartment playing on his drum set. Please subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. And thank you for watching.